Okay, let's talk about something many of us think about, but maybe don't always talk about out loud, a receding hairline. It is incredibly common, but man, it's surrounded by so much anxiety and just a lot of myths. So today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and get straight to the facts.
Have you ever had that moment, you catch a glimpse in the mirror or you see an old photo and you think, hang on, that looks a little different. That moment of realization? So many people go through that. If that's you, I want you to know this right up front. You are definitely not alone in this.
So just how not alone are we talking? Well, get ready for this number because it's pretty staggering. Up to half, that's 50%, of all men will experience some kind of hair loss by the time they hit their 50th birthday. This isn't some rare thing. It's a shared experience for literally millions of people. So let's get into what's actually going on.
All right, first things first. What are we actually talking about when we say a receding hairline? Because it's more than just losing a few extra hairs in the shower. There's a real biological process happening here, and understanding it is absolutely the first step.
The fancy medical term for this is androgenic alopecia. Let's just break that down real quick. Andro refers to hormones, specifically androgens, and genic points to your genes. So right there in the name, you have the cause. It's basically a gradual retreat of the hairline, usually starting right above the temples. And while we often think of this as a guy thing, women can experience it too. It just tends to look a little different.
So that leads us to the big question, right? Why? Why does this happen? Well, it's not just one thing you can point to. It's more like a perfect storm, a combination of factors that team up to mess with your hair's natural life cycle. Let's dig into the root of the issue.
It pretty much boils down to these three heavy hitters. First, your family history. Genetics are a huge piece of the puzzle. Then you've got hormonal changes. And finally, just the natural process of getting older. What happens is, over time, these things can cause your hair follicles to literally shrink. They start producing finer and shorter hairs, until, eventually, they just stop producing hair altogether.
And the way this shows up can look pretty different. For men, the classic pattern often starts at the temples and moves back across the head, sometimes forming that V shape we call a widow's peak. For women, on the other hand, it's often more of a general thinning, especially right at the part in their hair, which can slowly get wider over time.
Now, if you're worried about this, trust me, trying to self-diagnose on the internet is a one-way ticket to a stress-filled rabbit hole. The smartest, clearest, and most logical next step is to get a professional opinion so you can understand your specific situation.
And that journey starts with a dermatologist. A specialist isn't just going to glance at your scalp. The first thing they'll do is just talk to you, get your personal medical history, and ask about your family's history too. It's all about getting the complete picture, and it's such a crucial first step.
So what exactly happens at that appointment? Well, a doctor has a few tools they can use. They'll start with a simple visual exam and something called a pull test, where they gently tug on a few hairs to see how easily they come out. If they need more info, they might do a tiny scalp biopsy to rule out any infections or diseases. Or they could order a blood test just to check for other things like a thyroid condition that could be contributing to the hair loss.
Okay, so let's say you've got a diagnosis. What now? Well, the good news is you have options. But it is so important to think of these as available choices, not things you absolutely have to do.
And this right here is a really crucial point. Treatment isn't always necessary. I mean, if your hairline is changing simply because you're getting older, and it's not a sign of some other medical issue, then choosing to just embrace it is a completely valid, powerful option. The decision is 100% yours.
But if you do decide to explore treatment, there are a few main paths. You've probably heard of Minoxidil, or Rogaine. It's an over-the-counter treatment that you apply to your scalp. Then there's Finasteride, which is a prescription pill that actually works to block the hormone that causes hair loss in the first place. And for a more permanent approach, there's hair transplant surgery, where a surgeon moves healthy follicles from the back of your head to the areas that are thinning.
Now, we need to pause and talk a little more about Finasteride. It's really important to know that while it can be effective, it does come with some serious risks. We're talking about potential side effects like a reduced sex drive, and it's even been associated with a higher risk of a more serious form of prostate cancer. These are not small things, and they are absolutely something you need to discuss in detail with your doctor.
Okay, so let's start to wrap things up by looking at that big, lingering question. What's next? What does the future hold for your hairline? Honestly, managing your expectations is every bit as important as any treatment you might consider.
And the simple, honest answer is, it's kind of uncertain. This quote really says it all. It is genuinely difficult to predict the exact progression.
For some people, it might be a small change that just stays that way for decades. For others, it might be a more continuous process. There's no crystal ball.
That said, there was one practical clue you might be able to look at. Remember how we said genetics play a huge role? Well, because of that, looking at the hair loss pattern of a parent or maybe an older sibling, sometimes I can give you a little preview of what might be in store for you. It's not a guarantee, of course, but it can be a helpful guidepost.
And that brings us right here, to the end. We've looked at the what, the why, and the how of a receding hairline. We've covered everything from diagnosis to the full range of options, including medical treatments and simply embracing a natural change. The power is truly in your hands. So the question to leave you with is this: how will you approach your hair's future?